also have a history of kind of moving in and out of Pakistan. I mean, let's remember here, the people we are fighting today, we funded 20 years ago. And we did it because we were locked in this struggle with the Soviet Union. They invaded Afghanistan, and we did not want to see them control Central Asia. And we went to work. And it was President Reagan in partnership with the Congress, led by Democrats, who said, you know what, sounds like a pretty good idea. Let's deal with the ISI and the Pakistani military, and let's go recruit these mujahideen. And that's great. Let's get some to come from Saudi Arabia and other places, importing their Wahhabi brand of Islam so that we can go beat the Soviet Union. And guess what? They retreated. They lost billions of dollars, and it led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a very strong argument, which is, it wasn't a bad investment to end the Soviet Union, but let's be careful what we sow because we will harvest. So we then left Pakistan. We said, okay, fine, you deal with the stingers that we've left all over your country. You deal with the mines that are along the border. And by the way, we don't want to have anything to do with you. In fact, we're sanctioning you. So we stopped dealing with the Pakistani military and with ISI, and we now are making up for a lot of lost time.
4 Αμερικανοί πολίτες είχαν πέσει θύματα Ιρακινών ανταρτών. Κανείς δεν μπορούσε να κατανοήσει το μένος των Ιρακινών. Την προσβολή των νεκρών, που τα κουφάρια τους έρνονταν καμένα στους δρόμους, ενώ μικροί και μεγάλοι έδειχναν να το γλεντούν. Τα διεθνή μέσα ενημέρωσης μετέδωσαν τότε ότι οι άτυχοι άνθρωποι εργάζονταν στο Ιράκ ως υπάλληλοι ιδιωτικής εταιρείας. Όμως για ποια ιδιωτική εταιρεία εργάζονταν? Αυτό που τότε πέρασε στα ψηλά ήταν ότι οι άνθρωποι που δολοφονήθηκαν στη Φαλούτζα ήταν υπάλληλοι της εταιρείας Blackwater, μια από τις πιο δραστήριες εταιρείες στον τομέα της παροχής πολεμικών υπηρεσιών. Οι ιδιωτικές εταιρείες πολέμου είναι μία από τις πιο επικερδείς και αναπτυσσόμενες σύγχρονες βιομηχανίες. Πρόκειται για πολυεθνικές που σε έναν πόλεμο προσφέρουν τα πάντα. Μισθοφόρους, άρτια εκπαιδευμένους ιδιωτικούς κομάντος έτοιμους να αναλάβουν οποιαδήποτε αποστολή, φρουρούς, πολεμικό εξοπλισμό τελευταίας τεχνολογίας, εκπαιδευτές, ανακριτές, μάγειρες, οδηγούς, αποθηκάριους, τα πάντα.
In a dangerous world, where your safety is not assured, there is only one choice. Choose skill. Choose professionalism. Choose experience. Choose the best protectors in the business. When it comes to your safety, the best is the only choice. Profile Protective Services.
Με βάση τους κυρίως στην Αμερική και την Αγγλία, οι εταιρείες αυτές δραστηριοποιούνται σε όλο τον πλανήτη, όπου υπάρχει εστία σύγκρουσης. Δραστηριοποιήθηκαν στα Βαλκάνια, σε όλες τις εμφύλιες συγκρούσεις που συνόδευσαν τη διάλυση της πρώην Ιουγκοσλαβίας. Δραστηριοποιήθηκαν στον πόλεμο του Κωσόβου το 1999. Στο Αφγανιστάν το 2002. Σε χώρες της Λατινικής Αμερικής και φυσικά στο Ιράκ. Εάν συμβεί το μοιραίο, οι σύγχρονοι μισθοφόροι δεν καταμετρώνται στις απώλειες, αφού είναι υπάλληλοι κάποιες ιδιωτικής εταιρείας. Και αυτό δίνει στην Αμερικανική κυβέρνηση τη δυνατότητα να εμφανίζει μικρότερο αριθμό στρατιωτών που έπεσαν ως θύματα πολέμου.
If our boys started coming home in body bags, there would be this huge public outcry. If it happens with private contractors, it doesn't make the news so much. They're not these young, peach fuzz skinned 19-year-olds. They're often more experienced adults with grizzled faces who don't conjure up the kind of sympathy that soldiers do.
Range auto. All right, got auto range on it. Roger. Yeah, hit him. Got him. Good. Second one. Hit the other one. Hit the truck. Go to the right, see if anyone's moving by the truck. Take the trucks out. Is there anybody in the truck? Wait for movement. Not seeing any. Go ahead and store that. Auto range store. There's another guy underneath. Move right there. Good. Firing. Hit him. Target 4. We're taking the other truck out. Roger. Wait for move by the truck. Movement right there. Roger. He's wounded. Hit him. All right, hit the truck. Hit the truck and him. Go forward of it and hit him. Roger.
Blackwater envisions itself as the FedEx of the national security apparatus. But the reality is that Blackwater has become a prime player in the war on terror, nothing short of the Bush administration's Praetorian Guard.
Here are the facts. Blackwater was founded in the mid to late 90s by former Navy SEAL Eric Prince. This private firm originally focused on security training, providing services for a variety of groups, including SWAT teams and Navy SEALs. Blackwater had its ups and downs in this early period, but everything changed on September 11th. Blackwater expanded quickly, becoming part of a larger corporate entity called the Prince Group. Blackwater began receiving multi-million no-bid contracts from the United States government, expanding beyond training services to deploy private security contractors in Iraq, Afghanistan, and even in post-Katrina New Orleans. In the course of only a few years, Blackwater evolved into a private army, working for FEMA, the CIA, the State Department, and more. This heralded the largest outsourcing of military activity in United States history. Advocates claim this was a financially savvy move, and that private contractors such as Halliburton and Blackwater could save taxpayer money. However, critics told a very different story, and they didn't think cash was the biggest problem. Instead, they argued, Blackwater's private army existed outside of the law. Here's where it gets crazy. While the Uniform Code of Military Justice does apply to persons serving with or accompanying an armed force in the field, Blackwater was repeatedly accused of violating the law. These alleged violations include everything from extrajudicial killings to obstructing investigations and smuggling weapons to foreign countries. Some of these accusations were informal, such as journalists noting that Blackwater employees treated Iraqi or Afghan citizens in a disrespectful manner. Other complaints became a matter of law. After the death of 4 Blackwater employees in Fallujah, the surviving relatives sued, claiming Blackwater was purposefully impeding investigations. In 2007, Blackwater employees killed 17 Iraqi citizens in Baghdad in an event that remains enormously contentious. Congress and the United Nations became involved. Later that year, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee questioned Prince about the events. Iraqi witnesses claimed that Blackwater launched an unprovoked attack on the civilians, while the U.S. military and the United Nations published their own criticisms of the private firm. The U.S. military found that Blackwater used excessive force, and the UN found that although Blackwater was purportedly providing security, its employees were engaging in military action, making them mercenaries and therefore in violation of international law. Eric Prince characterized these criticisms as part of a political attack. Blackwater's status in Iraq remained in limbo. Congress introduced legislation clarifying the laws binding private security firms, but questions remain. Was Blackwater legal? The UN considers all mercenary forces illegal under the 1989 UN Mercenary Convention, but the United States is not a signatory to this agreement. Why use a private military in the first place? There are several profound political advantages for governments that hire mercenaries. In the case of US politics, hiring private firms helps legislators avoid instituting unpopular drafts or risking public outcry when US soldiers are killed. This outsourcing also allows legislators to distance themselves from the legality or illegality of military actions. And what happened to Blackwater? Eric Prince sold it and moved to the Middle East, but Blackwater is still around today and it still rakes in government money. You may not have heard of it in some time, but that's because Blackwater changed its name, first to XE Services and then to Academi. Critics believe the name changes are the company's unsuccessful attempts to distance itself from controversy. And, arguably, this accusation is correct. Regardless of the name, it seems there's still plenty of stuff that Blackwater doesn't want you to know. Here are the facts. Earlier, we explored the story of the private security firm Blackwater, known as Academi today. Originally a training service, Blackwater expanded after 9/11, filling roles traditionally played by the US military. When the group came under congressional scrutiny, many Americans were made aware of private military corporations, or PMCs, for the first time. Critics argue that privatizing the Army has severe risk, including possible corruption and a lack of oversight. Advocates argue that PMCs have concrete benefits for taxpayers and the military. But while PMCs may be controversial, both critics and advocates agree they may also be the future of war. Here's where it gets crazy. History is littered with mercenaries, and according to scholars like Peter W. Singer, state-level militaries are a comparatively recent invention. In his book, Corporate Warriors, The Rise of the Privatized Military Industry, Singer divides PMCs into three types: military providers, or soldiers for hire, consultants, and logistical support companies, such as Halliburton. Logistical support isn't new. Brown and Root Services, or BRS, built roads, bases, harbors, and more for Vietnam from 1962 to 1972, and also worked in Zaire, Haiti, Somalia, Saudi Arabia, and more. Yet for decades, certain capabilities and intelligence assets were restricted to state militaries. Now it seems that private companies are taking increasingly assertive roles, and this business is growing. According to The Economist, the private soldier industry has gone global and is worth as much as $100 billion. Since 70% of these firms are British or American, let's take a closer look at the situation in the US. Privatization reached a new era of expansion under Dick Cheney. Working as the Secretary of Defense under George H.W. Bush, Cheney hired BRS to figure out what advantages private companies might have when integrated into warfare as part of a post-Cold War downsizing initiative called BRAC. The privatization push has grown since. As the U.S. military winds down operations in Iraq and Afghanistan, the Army plans to reduce troop size by 50,000 over 5 years, and the Marines aim to reduce their forces by 20,000 members. As soldiers and Marines exited Iraq, they were being replaced by PMCs. A company named DynCorp International began overseeing helicopters, while companies like the Global Strategies Group supplied security services. Academi is no longer allowed in Iraq, but it remains active in Afghanistan. PMCs are an international trend. Chinese workers in South Sudan, Angola, and other African areas pay private Chinese security services for protection. Muammar Gaddafi hired mercenaries before his death in October 2011. And, in the Philippines, some private armies have become a threat to national security. In November of 2012, the national police chief ordered all Filipino police forces to step up offensive actions against the Britannico Group and similar entities, as these groups may pose a threat to the 2013 elections. Protection is not inherently a bad thing, and security services are often necessary. Yet the regulations governing PMCs are unclear, and experts worry about spin-offs when a large PMC subcontracts to small, local groups. After the job ends, these local groups may sell their experience, training, and weaponry to the highest bidder. Who should be responsible for these groups after they're cut loose? Do the benefits of privatizing the world's militaries outweigh the risk? Who profits most from this arrangement? These questions will only become more important as the privatization of militaries across the world continues. But, according to critics and activists, the answers to these questions are the stuff that private armies and the politicians supporting them don't want you to know.